Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey,
You know what? I love it because you're Amy Morris. I'm Amy Morris. You were diagnosed 8 weeks after your wedding.
yes,
I too was diagnosed 8 weeks after my wedding. Gosh, we are similar.
that when I was at a point where all I could do was basically scroll through Instagram because that didn't require me to get off the couch. It didn't require me to think. And your name kind of passed by with the Cancer Freedom Program, and I was like, well, there's my sign.
I
I
gotta look at
couldn't.
this more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Amy, share with us a little bit about like your background and like take us back to the beginning and tell us like the big story.
Okay. I was diagnosed, as you said, in December 2021 with stage 1B breast cancer. And it was 8 weeks after I got married. I had, put off my mammogram in COVID. And until I think I was at like 18 months. And I have a strong family history of breast cancer. I have three maternal aunts,
Wow.
but no genetic for it. Then they didn't have the BRCA gene. So I wasn't too concerned because, it didn't come through my mom at all. And so I just went for a normal mammogram, but it was actually one of those moments where, again, I was scrolling. Um, I still had energy at this point though. And a lady just, I happened to see something that was like, I was just diagnosed with breast cancer. Go get your mammograms. Just go get the exam and, help yourself in case you have it. And so it
Wow.
was just kind of one of those, all right, I'll make that phone call today.
Wow.
And I did, and wasn't expecting anything at all, and got the phone call. We need you to come back in. And then they did ultrasound and then the biopsy and then the diagnosis phone call. And it was just out of nowhere.
Wow. So, like, what was life like for you before you were diagnosed?
Um, we were newly married.
Oh,
We had just gone to St. Thomas to visit some friends. We said that we weren't going to do a big honeymoon, that we were going to do like mini moons,
okay.
and take a trip like once a month. And
Ah,
so that was our plan for the next year, was that once a
wow.
month we were going to take these little mini trips. And we got one trip in and I got diagnosed and life stopped.
Wow.
At least it turned a drastic corner.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what type of cancer were you diagnosed with?
It's the ductal
Yeah.
carcinoma,
Yeah. And what stage?
stage 1B.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So, what did your treatment path look like for you after that?
that was interesting to me because I really didn't know anything about
Yeah.
breast cancer. I didn't. My aunts had it, but that was like 20 years ago. I didn't have close friends who had it, so I really didn't understand the process.
Hmm.
I remember when I got the phone call, the radiologist who was talking to me, she was wonderful. She gave me recommendations to surgeons, and she just said, don't be choosy about your doctor. Just get into practice and get in as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I felt this huge urgency that, I've got to go. I've got to get this taken care of right now. And they saw me pretty quickly within like a week,
Okay.
and I, it's funny because with a family history of breast cancer, I had always in the back of my head had these thoughts of, oh, well, if I'm ever diagnosed or if I ever have to do this, they can just double mastectomy. I don't need them. That is absolutely what I would do, no question. And I found myself sitting in front of a surgeon, and she gave me my options, and she said you can do a lumpectomy with radiation, or you can do the mastectomy with no radiation. And at that point, I thought there was no chance for chemo. I thought I'm stage 1B. I actually had melanoma when I was 30, and it was very early stage, and so they were able to remove it, and life went on. And so I
Yeah.
thought, oh, stage 1B, it's going to be the same thing. I can do a lumpectomy or mastectomy, and life will just go on like I never had it. Um, and the fear started then when I was sitting in front of the surgeon, and I just felt this overwhelming need of just get it out of me.
Mm,
I don't want to wait an extra 2 weeks to talk to a plastic surgeon for a mastectomy. I need surgery. I need it now, and I want it out of my body.
mhm.
So I really kind of rushed down the path for the lumpectomy and didn't really kind of give it, all of the thought that I would have wanted to. But
Mhm.
the fear started taking over almost immediately.
It's so hard to make those decisions. I mean, I think, we all think, "Well, this is what I would do."
Mm-hmm.
But, like, until you're sitting there, gosh, and, like, you might make a different decision now.
Right.
Like, like, it's so tough.
In fact, I actually, when I went back to see my surgeon, I think at like my 6 month checkup, I asked her, I said, can I decide now to do a mastectomy? Because I do have those thoughts. Did I make the right decision? And she said I could,
Mm,
that it wouldn't be a problem with insurance, but that it's a big surgery.
yeah,
And, I've kind of done what I needed to with the lumpectomy and radiation. And that should have the same outcome as a double mastectomy. That's not a 100% guarantee either.
right?
Um, so I, I kind of keep it on the back burner. If that fear ever creeps in too much, I know that's
Mhm.
kind of like an option.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, 'cause I mean, it's not something to be taken lightly. It's a
Mm-mm.
major surgery with lots of revisions and, like, lots of and it's not just one surgery, right, either.
And I had
So
no idea. I thought it was
yeah,
one and done.
totally.
And I
Yeah.
don't think there's enough information out
Mhm.
there to the general public for women of what does breast cancer involve. If you
Mhm.
do get it, this is kind of what to expect. I
Yeah.
was just kind of fumbling into the next step as I
Mhm.
went along.
Yeah. It's kinda
And
like bald heads and pink,
yes,
t-shirts, and that's it, right?
yes.
Yeah.
But I really thought, okay, well, I escaped it early. I was one of the lucky ones, right?
Yeah.
Stage 1B. And then I went to the oncologist, and I was kind of like, why am I even going to the oncologist?
Yeah.
Why do I need
Yeah.
to do this? And he told me he needed to do some more testing to see if I needed chemotherapy or not. And that kind of really, I mean, you want to talk about instilling fear in somebody. I was like, no, I was going to get out of this
Yeah.
without that.
Yeah.
And he said, I really expect you to be in the gray area where you're going to have some tough decisions to make. He said,
Oh my.
he, yeah, he said, I don't expect to be able to tell you I recommend it. And I don't expect to say you don't need it. I think you're going to have to make a really tough decision.
Wow.
Um, so for 3 weeks while I was waiting for my oncotype score to come
Mhm.
back, I was, what do I do? And, I have kids,
Mhm.
and I was like, I've got to do everything I can if that's what I need to do. Fortunately, I went back into the oncologist, and he was able to look at me and say, chemotherapy would do no good for you. And it's funny because the way I overthink things, I'm like, okay, is that a good thing that chemotherapy wouldn't do anything for me,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
is
I
it
would go
not?
there too. I would go there too. Like, what? It's not even an option? Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So chemotherapy was kind of off the table either
yes,
way. Okay.
yes.
So how much radiation did you end up doing?
I ended up doing. They wanted to do like the longer span, and I try to put so much of it out of my head now.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
want to say they could do a shorter time frame, but over 6 weeks. And they wanted to do that for me because of my skin cancer history. They
Mhm.
didn't. They were trying to stay
Mhm.
away from the burning,
Mhm.
but insurance would not approve that. So I think we did it over 5 weeks,
Yeah.
maybe, but
Yeah, sure.
every day
Okay.
for 5 weeks.
Okay. So you do the lumpectomy, then the
Hmm.
radiation.
Hmm.
You get to the end. Do you
Yeah,
get put on any kind of therapy long term, or is that kind of good luck,
I
Amy?
did.
Right?
I kind of laugh now thinking back to radiation because again, I thought that, oh, this isn't hard. This doesn't make me feel bad. I really didn't have any of the side effects of low energy from it initially.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finished radiation, I just remember kind of like bebopping out of the office saying, bye to all the nurses and thank you. And I'm so happy I'm done. And I knew I had to go to my oncologist, and I knew that he was going to put me on hormone therapy. But again, it was the little white pill that some people have to take, and that just helps cancer not recur, and you just go on with your life.
Just a
And I
little
had
white
no idea.
pill, right?
Yeah,
Just once a
yes,
day. Mm-hmm.
yes, yes.
Yeah, no big deal. Okay.
So I started that
Uh-huh.
in, I think, June of 20, I don't even remember now, 2022, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I did fine.
Yep.
They also did the Zometa infusions,
Uh-huh.
um, which I didn't know much about that, other than they said, that can kind of help with a recurrence and also help with osteoporosis. And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, of course I'll do that.
sure.
The first time I got that kind of knocked me on my
Yeah.
feet for a few days, but things were going pretty good. I started getting a little tired.
Yeah.
Um, but by August, I started getting some back pain.
Okay.
And I got scared.
Mm.
I was like, is this a recurrence? It's probably a
Mm-hmm.
little too early for that. But
Mm-hmm.
it didn't even dawn on me that it could be a side effect from the
Mm-hmm.
anastrozole.
Yeah.
Um, by September, my entire body hurt from, I mean, my hair follicles to my toes.
Oh my.
And I didn't want to move. I didn't want to get off the couch. I
Oh.
was so tired. And I guess I had never experienced fatigue before.
Mm.
It's the difference between being tired and fatigue is it doesn't matter how much sleep you get with the fatigue,
Oh.
it never goes away.
It's just like so
Um,
heavy. It's like this
yes,
heavy blanket on top of you too.
yes. I mean, to get up and get in the shower was an ordeal. I,
Wow.
I mean, it was an absolute ordeal, and I was still working from home.
So you're
I had
like
been doing,
6 months into your therapy at this point, really?
hmm
Okay.
hmm
And you start
and
getting these like,
I worked through it. My office was great. That when I had a doctor's appointment, no problem. And I think that kind of caught up with me because when I was got to the September timeframe and my energy started decreasing and I just hurt everywhere. I mean, it was all I could do. I would get out of my bed, go down the hall, work for 45 minutes, come back to bed for 15 minutes, go back to work. I mean,
gosh.
and when I first talked to you, I think I told you I was averaging like 300 steps a day.
Yeah.
And you were like, 300? Really? I'm like, yeah, 300. I was not moving.
Yeah. So like the first, like there's certain people that like I really remember the first time talking to them. Okay. Now I remember you obviously because we have the same name, but also because I
Mhm.
was in an Airbnb in
Oh,
Phoenix when I was
that's right. You were in Phoenix.
so I was like my husband and I called them like working vacations essentially. So we still work, we just go someplace hotter than here. And
Right.
we probably work part-time while we're there. And one of us takes care of the kids and the other one works, and then we swap. And so that's essentially what I was doing when we first met. So, but Amy, like you were beat up.
Yeah. Yeah. I had hit, of course, I went through it, only got worse going into October and November. And I cried every day, every night, cried myself to sleep. The anxiety was crippling. It was when I was up at my desk, all I could think about was cancer, 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 cancer. Is it going to come back? Is it, it just wouldn't stop in my head. And the depression
Wow.
started too. And so when I was scrolling through Instagram and I found your post, I showed it to my husband and I'm like, I've got to do something.
Mm.
I don't care what this takes. I've got to do something. I kind of felt like it was not my last chance, but my Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to do something. And he looked at me. He said, I don't care what it is. You need to sign up like now. And
Wow.
I sent you a message through Instagram. And I think we talked that night. If I remember correctly,
Yeah,
we talked that night,
could
and
be.
it's
Yeah.
so embarrassing because I remember just when we got on the video chat, I immediately burst into tears, and I was, please help.
First of all, like never embarrassing. Never. Um, that to me means like you really care about this, right? Like you haven't given
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Like there's still hope. And so, like, when people cry on well, first of all, like, I'm not a super big crier, but people do get me choked up. I'm getting a little choked up right now. But, like, when people cry talking to me, I expect that. Like,
Yeah,
that means you're human, you're alive, like, you're here.
but I didn't understand that that was normal.
Mm,
I didn't understand that what I was going through was normal and can be part of the process. I thought I really felt like I was losing my mind. Like
mm.
I'm like, okay, if I'm ever gonna get to where I'm going crazy, this might be what it feels like.
Wow, wow.
Um,
Okay. Jeez. It's terrifying.
it was terrifying. It was I can't live the rest of my life like this. There's no quality of life.
So talk to me about, like, the fear of recurrence. So, because that was that always with you throughout the whole time here, or did it come on really strong in the fall as well?
No, it that started coming on really strong. And again, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't know anything, so still thought the one and done. But as time went by and I was going through treatment, you learn more, you talk to more people, you see more stuff on the internet, you see more stuff in Facebook groups, and all of a sudden, all of these people are talking about recurrence, recurrence, recurrence,
Yeah.
and how common it is, and if it comes back it's going to be stage 4. And I remember then my oncologist saying, I can guarantee you that the lump that you had will not come back, but I can't guarantee you that it won't come back anywhere else. And I was
Right.
kind of like, what do you mean? I thought I was in that like 99th percentile or whatever. And so it started getting worse and worse. It was almost like the more information and misinformation I got, the worse that fear got, and the less I was able to do to keep myself healthy.
Wow. So that this is November essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're in April now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you feel now?
Oh my gosh, like I have my life back. Like I have my life back. I still have days, but I have my life back. I go out to dinner with friends. I go to the baseball game. I'm up at 11 o'clock at night talking to you. I mean, and I'm not in bed. I don't think I had smiled in months. Um, it it is a complete turnaround.
Wow. So when we look at where you were and where you are now,
Mhm.
like what made the difference? Like what was kind of the biggest thing that really opened things up for you?
I, I mean, obviously starting the program, and I think just being around a group of women and hearing their stories, and then learning through you and through all of your information, that these are the things you can do. There's a limited you know number of things that you can do, and the rest we can't control. And so once, little by little, when I started taking control of the exercise and the food, and I started feeling like I was doing something,
Mm,
then I wasn't afraid of the things I couldn't control, because
mhm.
as long as I'm doing everything I can, I feel like I'm doing something. um and it made a total difference.
Wow. And it's really just like the difference between kind of having a plan, having a
Mhm.
plan
Yes.
on what you can do and kind of like free fall almost.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
very much a type A personality. So if I have a plan, I'm
Yeah.
good. If I don't have a plan, and that's kind of where the free fall came in too. And because you talk so much about when you're first diagnosed, you get on this hamster wheel of this appointment, that appointment, but there's a plan, right? You've got
Mhm.
to see have radiation, you've got to have surgery, you've got to see the oncologist, and you're on this plan. And then when you're done and they say, here's your little white pill
Yeah.
for the next 5 years, see you in a year or 6 months,
Yeah.
and then you go home and you're just kind of looking around and you're like, I don't really understand what just happened,
Yeah.
and I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah. Yeah. So when like in the program, you definitely get the opportunity to like connect with other
Yes,
women. Like,
yes.
tell me more about like the relationships that you've kind of developed through the program with the other women that are in it.
Those are some amazing women. And what I loved is that it wasn't all breast cancer. It was kind of people from all walks of life, different
Mhm.
types of cancer, different stages. And when you talk to somebody who had a much worse diagnosis than you did, and they're so positive and they're taking control and they're living their life, I mean, you can't help but step back and say, you know what, I want my life too, and if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also like there's more to it than that too, Amy. I feel like even, coming as a stage 1 survivor,
Mm-hmm.
like that trauma is taken seriously
Yes,
by other ladies as well. It's not like,
yes.
"Oh, Amy, you just had stage 1, whatever." It's like your
They
trauma was unique to you.
I never once felt like any of the other ladies were judging me, like, what are you doing here? You didn't have chemotherapy, or,
Mm,
you're
mhm.
just 1B,
Yeah,
why are you here?
yeah,
And you're exactly right. They never you minimize the trauma that I had, and it is traumatic. Prior to meeting these women and being in the group, I did feel that. I was like, I shouldn't feel traumatized. I shouldn't feel stressed. I shouldn't feel anxious because, I didn't have to do chemotherapy. They caught it early, and, you know, I, but I was terrified. So you would put on this exterior of, oh, I'm fine to everybody that you're around and at work, but on the inside, you feel like you're dying.
yeah, yeah, and it's like so unique to you, right? And
Yeah.
that's just it. It just doesn't really matter because if you're feeling that way, then that's the way it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I, and I have to tell you too, I mean, you were a huge inspiration, because I can't imagine having had your diagnosis at the age that you did right after getting married, and look at you. You smile all the time. You've got such energy, and I was like, again, if she can do that, I can do it
Mm,
too. And you just provide such a positive inspiration for all of us. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
that's so kind. Um, it's all relating back to living your life, right?
Hmm.
Every single day I get to do exactly what I want to do. And
Yeah.
so that's it. And gosh, oh, the same really applies to you, Amy. God, my therapist said something to me the other week. I think he said, gosh, with like great, he sent me an email. He said something like, with great gift comes great responsibility or something like that. And he's like, sorry to put that on you, but it's true. And I'm like, oh, I'll take it like
Yeah.
all day, because I
It's
love it.
and I did there was a point where I did start to feel like having breast cancer was a blessing.
Mm,
I didn't, and I do feel that way now, because when you, again, one of the things that you do after you're diagnosed, they did genetic testing on me to confirm I didn't have BRCA, and I didn't. But they found another genetic mutation for me. I have the genetic mutation for melanoma and pancreatic cancer.
really?
The
Yeah.
melanoma didn't scare me,
Yeah.
because I had that at 30, and I stay out of the sun. I go see the dermatologist.
Yeah.
But the pancreatic cancer part put the fear of God in me.
No kidding.
And so, but now they can do preventative stuff for me. I get to do, endoscopic ultrasounds and all that fun stuff, but I can
Mhm.
do that once a year. And my oncologist looked at me and he said, you know what? I would 1000% want to know if I had that mutation, because you're going to be able to follow this. You're going to be able to prevent it if something does happen.
Yeah.
They'll find it early. And so then I was like, you know what? Breast cancer was really a blessing in disguise that I was able to find that out.
Mm,
And, hopefully I won't ever have to deal with that. But if I do,
yeah.
I should catch it early.
Like, and your kids too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking more about the other women in the program too, and like some other Facebook groups or other areas that you can be in kind of like this survivorship
Mhm.
community, like when you were in those other groups, did you find like that was making your anxiety way worse? Yeah. Because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
recurrence, recurrence, recurrence.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was primarily in the group for the anastrozole because
Mhm.
once I kind of put two and two together and figured out what was happening with me was related to the side effects from the medicine, um, I wanted to absorb more information. And so I found a Facebook group for that. And yeah, I mean, you always have the doomsday stories in there. And it's, you know, for example, if you tell somebody, oh, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and everybody's going to have the, oh, yes, and this so and so died
Yeah.
from it. And so, yeah, it absolutely increased that
Yeah,
anxiety.
exactly. I know, like, just as an ovarian cancer survivor, that's like all you hear, right? And
Yeah.
I remember distinctly, like, someone that I used to go to university with saying to me, "Oh, well, my grandma had ovarian cancer," and I just made a point to be like, "Oh, what happened to her?" Just like, let me bait this answer.
Yeah.
Oh, like,
Yeah.
oh, she ended up passing away. And I was like, yeah, that's why, like, just stop. Just stop saying things like that,
Yeah.
please, because that hurts so bad,
I
right?
know. I
But it's
know.
it's just like the nature of it, right? And like where you are now is that you need support in recovery. And
Yes.
where you were when you were first diagnosed, you needed a different support then,
Yes.
right? Because it
Yes.
was it was
Exactly.
intense, it was all consuming, but now you don't need that all consuming support.
Mm-mm.
And so that's where I feel like survivors get trapped in these Facebook groups and they're just this endless pit because
Yes.
it's not the right support for you right now.
Right. And
Yeah.
I remember one of the things you initially said is, you know, that you yourself will go a long time and forget,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
you had cancer, or if you'll feel a, crick in your back, it won't occur to you that it could be a recurrence.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet,
Yeah.
but I have days where I don't think about it at
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
that's amazing because literally every second I was all consumed by it.
And it's like, what are we like? We're 6 months, not even 6 months out from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Amy, what does the future hold for you now? What are you working on in your recovery now?
You know what? Step by step, day by day, still working on my energy has been great. I want to keep it there. I still want to feel in control of what I'm putting in my body and be aware of what I'm putting in my body. Um, the exercise for me, the exercise part of it, with the steps and the strength training, exercise for me has always kind of been a roller coaster. Like I was in the best shape of my life at 40, and then I did nothing. And then I'd work out for a couple of months and then I'd do nothing. It
Yeah.
was just kind of that, oh, either I want to fit in this certain size
Yeah.
or, something vain like that.
Yeah.
And now it has become a non-negotiable because I want to
Mm.
be healthy.
Mhm.
I want to drop the weight because I want to be healthy. I don't want to feel like I can't get out of bed in the morning because I've got so much weight and no energy. That the walking helps. It gives me energy. It helps with the weight. It's a non-negotiable for me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so I'm still working on that with the strength training,
Mhm.
but I'm getting there.
You've come so far. Oh my gosh,
Getting there.
it's like night and day. Yeah. You really took a turn, like, I feel like you really started to embrace it, like, probably, oh, like 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
maybe? Like, you
Yeah.
really started to turn it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
I mean, this is for me. This is for my life, and I want to live it.
yeah, the motivator is just so much stronger than
Yes.
looking good in a swimsuit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, Amy, I always like to ask one last question of you. And I'm really wondering, after all of this that you've been through, if you were to have the opportunity to speak to another woman who had just been diagnosed,
Mhm.
what's like one piece of advice that you would pass along to her?
Wow. Because there's so much that you could say is really to take it step by step and embrace yourself and give yourself the grace and know that what you are experiencing is valid and you deserve the support and you'll get through it and you can do it and there is another side.
Mhm. That's it. There is another side. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Amy, thanks so much for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you, Dr. Amy. It's a pleasure.